Welcome to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast with your hosts Jim Quinn of OSGA.com and J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports. Let's get started.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Cast Your Bets, a weekly podcast where we try to teach you a little bit about how to bet these games, where to bet these games, and give you some angles on why you should put money on certain teams each and every week. This week, it's the NFL playoff edition of Cast Your Bets. My name's Jim here from OSGA.com with my good friend J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports and Pregame.com. J.R.O., how you feeling today?
Feeling fine, my friend. Can't believe that you said week 18. That's right. We've been doing this 18 weeks, NFL playoff wild card action. Hard to believe that the championship game, Alabama, rolling in there against a real good Georgia team. And I'm willing to play some bets here, willing to get into the action, have a lot of information, and I'm going to hang up a big winner in the playoffs this weekend.
Well, Happy New Year to you, my friend. I mean, I watched some NFL games on Sunday. I watched some college football playoff action on New Year's Day. I hope you had a good New Year's and with some ugly football on Sunday and some damn good football on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. My hat's off to those championship games. Obviously, Oklahoma had that game, but the Georgia found a way to win. Alabama just decimated a Clemson team almost in a revenge mode. And we told the listeners, and when the listeners hopefully listen, that it was ugly week 17. It was nasty in the NFL. Dallas Cowboys get the job done 6-0. That was terrible. Hate to give out that game for people to watch. I know it was a winner ATS-wise, but that was some bad football. Let's see if we can get some good football this weekend.
Well, I think we are. We're working into the playoffs here. This is where the NFL teams, they turn it up a notch. It's a different level of football when I watch it. And I think that I'm excited about watching some playoff football, especially after having to force myself to watch almost all of that Dallas Eagles game last week. With this being a whole new season, there's some different angles I'm sure you're looking at in terms of handicapping. One I want to touch on right away is everybody wants to play for home field advantage. Typically, we talked, back in week 2 or 3 on the podcast about home field advantage. Does that change at all, do you think, JR, once we get into the playoffs?
Well, there's two sides of that coin there. Home field advantage certainly is a great home field, obviously, if you're a New Orleans Saints, Minnesota Vikings. But, a lot of these teams traditionally get hot in the wild card, and a lot of these teams go rolling as visitors, and obviously some of these teams that have some momentum at the end. So I guess without getting too wordy here, yes, home field advantage plays into it, obviously the 3 or 3.5 point line. But there's a lot of teams traditionally, if you look back, that got hot in week 1 in the wild card and went all the way through to the Super Bowl. So you have to really do your research. You have to really look into it. And teams that catch fire and go on the road gain a little confidence, and they roll into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I always think of 3 points, right? And, maybe I'm a little misguided in thinking in the playoffs, maybe that's a little higher. You make a really good point there, and I think the listeners should take note of that a team that catches fire, regardless of where they're seated, on one of those magic runs, certainly can get the job done and make their way to the Super Bowl. One of the other things I want to talk about is, you're a big fan of offense puts asses in the seats, defense wins championships. You're looking for teams here in the playoffs that can play some DJR?
Absolutely. Offense puts people obviously in the stands. Defense wins championships, and turnovers wins championships as traditionally the teams that protect the rock. And you guys make fun of me sometimes because I always say, hey, they don't turn the ball over. They're well coached at discipline. But look for the turnover ratio. I did a lot of research. The poorest teams out there, the bottom of the barrel, just cough the ball up. They're -20, -25. And the good teams traditionally every year don't put the ball on the carpet, don't turn the ball over. But defense and defense-minded teams, a la the Minnesota Vikings, if I can chirp a little bit out them. How about, like I said, a functionable mid-range, almost like an Army type of quarterback with Case Keenum, and the Minnesota Vikings are one of the best teams, if not the best teams in the NFL. Nobody talks about their offense. Everybody talks about their defense, as they don't give up more than 14, 17 points a game. Case Keenum is a functional quarterback that gets the job done, and Minnesota plays defense, and they are nasty in the playoffs.
Well, I think that's how Jacksonville made it into the playoffs, too. You look at their defense, and they're tearing it up, too. And, what's surprising is I think the New England Patriots this year were the number one team defense-wise with how many points they give up each week. So I think you're right that you got to look at defense. In addition to Minnesota, who else you looking at with that defensive edge?
Well, you're right about Jacksonville as they play defense first, as I am certainly not a Bortles fan at all, as Jacksonville got some great draft picks. They got a great corner, and if it wouldn't be for Jacksonville defense, they wouldn't even be thinking about being in here. How about the Baltimore Ravens, if I could talk about that? They could not play defense to a Cincinnati Bengals team. All they had to do was win the game, and they lost back in the Buffalo Bills in there. And the Bills, believe it or not, play some nasty defense also. So I'm talking Jacksonville, believe it or not, as ugly as it is, the Buffalo Bills, and obviously the Minnesota Vikings. And you know what? I'd like to chirp a little bit also. The Philadelphia Eagles are nasty on defense, nondescript, but their front four are, you have to agree with me there. The Eagles play D, my friend.
Yeah, they certainly do. And, despite the fact that they have no Carson Wentz at this point, you still have to consider them as a viable option to win the NFC with a defense that really, doesn't give up a lot of points, is very opportunistic, and, really heads to the ball and plays with a lot of fire. The other thing you got to look at is this year's a little bit different than I've seen in the last few years, JR. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but you have 12 playoff teams. 6 of them have first-time playoff quarterbacks. Tyrod Taylor for the Bills, Mariota for the Titans. You alluded to him. Bortles for Jacksonville, also not a fan, got to tell you. Jared Goff for the Rams. I mean, he came out of nowhere this year and really fired it up. Case Keenum, you just talked about him. And Foles for Philly, 6 first-time starters in the NFL playoffs. They're going to see a different notch going on. Any of these quarterbacks seem to you like somebody that might be a little skittish or not perform up to spec as what they did in the first 16 games of the year?
Let me tell you a stat I have here, and I'm a papers guy. I do all the homework. The Atlanta Falcons played a tough schedule. I'm telling you, the 4th or 5th tough schedule in the NFL. You can mark my word. And the Los Angeles Rams were 25 or 26th weakest schedule in the league. Jared Goff will have his hands full. I'm certainly not tipping my hand, but the Atlanta Falcons played a banger schedule, and the LA Rams played a terrible schedule. Goff as a 6.5 or 7-point favorite in this position in the playoffs against Matty Ice. I don't know, my friends. Hold on to your hats and put your glasses on for that baby.
The other one I look at is you got 2 rookies going, Buffalo against Jacksonville, so that's kind of a throw up in the air there. And I think Matty Ice has kind of been on fire too. We talked about it maybe week 6 or 7. You were down a little bit on the Falcons because of that new offensive coordinator, but the last few weeks, it seems like Matty Ice has really gotten it together. And that also leads to teams with momentum going into the playoffs. Certainly some of these teams going into the playoffs were rolling. Do you think that plays a whole lot? Can you roll that through if you're a football team and get past that first game and then keep rolling?
Well, let me tell you, public perception for the Philadelphia Eagles is such at an all-time low as Carson Wentz and the Eagles, and justifiably so, are where they're supposed to be. But let me tell you right now, they went from flying first class across the country to a rowboat where nobody wants anybody. And if I can allude to the other thing, they rated all 12 quarterbacks in the playoffs, and I have them rated also. Obviously, Brady, Matty Ice, baby, everybody gets it done with Big Ben. But I tell you what, 11 quarterbacks made the grade at Nick Foles. Nobody is back at Nick Foles now. 1 for 17, third down conversions. He seems like he fell off. I thought he would be better. I thought he'd be more functional, but nobody and their brother is back at Nick Foles. One more point. When the Philadelphia Eagles play their wild card game as a home dog and the public and the entire solar system is back on the other side, I don't know about that, my friend. I might be jumping on them Eagles in a nasty, ugly spot.
Yeah, because, of course, we just talked 3 minutes ago. They got that D. As long as Foles is manageable, you could end up with a situation where, not a top 10 quarterback gets your team all the way to the Super Bowl, like we saw there in the mid-'80s with a bunch of teams, including the Raiders. I watched that college football game with Georgia and Oklahoma. I went out, JR. I figured Oklahoma had it in the bag. I went out. My phone does the ESPN thing. Doodle-doo, doodle-doo. The next thing I know, I look at my phone. It's 35-35. I go home. I'm like, is this the greatest college football game of all time, or did Oklahoma choke? Alabama, on the other hand, they've been crushing people. They've been beating people up. I mean, Nick Saban, I'm not a Nick Saban fan, but he somehow gets all the very best players. It's like Coach K at Duke in college basketball. It just seems like Nick Saban can do no wrong with the Crimson Tide. We've got Georgia, Alabama, and the championship game coming up. Alabama's a 4-point favorite there. It seems a little low to me. JR, did you watch that game? Do you have any thoughts on this championship game without actually making any picks or anything? Because for me, it's a game to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. It's the SEC, cream of the crop. Everybody was chirping Big Ten. Everyone was chirping a little bit about some of the other conferences. But the SEC with Georgia, who finds a way to win, they got a great running back. They obviously got Chubb as their running back. And they got a freshman quarterback that was all-state in college. He was a great recruit. He was almost going to go to Alabama. This Fromm kid goes to Georgia, and he gets the job done. He's one of those kids that, went like 111-1, won 3 state championships in AAA, AA. The kid can play. But let me tell you about Georgia. Good teams find a way to win. Baker Mayfield and the Heisman Trophy, they put up a lot of points, but their defense was suspect as they gave up like a 52 to Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma just couldn't stop anybody. The good teams find a way to win. And you knew the momentum turned at the end of that half that if you had Oklahoma, you were praying. Because I obviously had Oklahoma, and I put fat loser in the third quarter as I knew Georgia was gaining some momentum.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised to see Georgia in this spot. About 8 games into the season, I thought that Georgia was going to fade, and obviously I was horribly wrong there. And I think we're looking at an outstanding NCAA championship game. I'm a little bummed out it's 2 SEC teams. I would have liked to seen somebody else in there, but I do think we probably have the 2 best teams with the way Oklahoma couldn't get it done there in the championship game. Folks, we're going to be right back with a short commercial from OSGA.com.
The offshore betting industry is totally unregulated.
Where can you turn to make sure your money is safe offshore?
The Offshore Gaming Association, OSGA. Visit the Offshore Gaming Association at www.osga.com or call them toll-free 7 days a week at 877-OSGA-BET. That's 877-674-2238. Established in 1998, the OSGA has been the ultimate watchdog for the unregulated offshore betting industry. They have helped thousands of players find secure, reputable offshore wagering outlets and perform dispute resolution for hundreds of wronged players. Visit the Offshore Gaming Association at www.osga.com or call them toll-free at 877-OSGA-BET.
Folks, welcome back to Cast Your Bets. Jim here from OSGA.com with my good friend J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports and Pregame.com. You can find this podcast every week out on Blueberry.com, which is a very popular podcasting site. Sign up and get notified when it's there. You can also hunt us down, Cast Your Bets in iTunes. We're on the OSGA.com website. And we also do a nice video version of this with some stats and trends out there on YouTube under OSGA Sports Betting. So we hope you check us out each and every week. We're going to roll this thing on for at least through the college basketball season and then March Madness. Right now, we're talking NFL playoffs. JRO, you're going to have a bunch of stuff. I mean, there's not a lot of games, and you're not a lot of game guy, so I'm sure you're going to have some other stuff besides NFL up there on pregame here in the coming days.
Yeah, absolutely. To allude to your question there, I will have a big NFL game as I love one of these games in the wild card this weekend. I'm only going to have one big play as I certainly am going to give a free play here, but a paid selection at pregame.com where I've been doing pretty well is going to be there. I'm also doing the college basketball. I'm doing NBA. I'm doing the hockey. I'm doing it all. Greatest time of year here. Love doing this. 22, 23 years. I even lost count. I am a creature of habit. I don't know any other thing but to do is handicap here. I love it, and pregame.com will have all my plays, including one here on the podcast, which I really am going to get after, and you guys can send it in on the NFL.
Fantastic, man. That's a terrific site. I'm glad to see you got with those guys a number of years ago. You've been with them, what now, about 6-7 years?
2010, my friend. So 8 years. I've been grinding over there. Not for nothing, but I get a lot of emails, a lot of approaches to be on a ton of other websites. But I like to go exclusive. I can't go myself too thin because I'm spending hours at pregame.com. But to answer your question, yeah, 8 years at pregame.com is a very transparent website, and I love it there.
Fantastic, man, and that's a good spot to be there. Every week I try to talk a little bit about the sportsbook industry. Over at Offshore Gaming Association, OSGA.com. That's what we've been doing for nearly 20 years now. And one of the things I'd like to talk about is licensing. Sportsbooks all are licensed somewhere, or they're supposed to be licensed somewhere. Sometimes it seems to give players a little bit of false sense of security. There's different jurisdictions out there with all kinds of different rules. Over in England, they've managed to really put a nice package together with the UK Gambling Commission to really monitor what goes on make sure there's no underage gambling, make sure there's no criminals running these places, make sure the places are on the up and up and they pay winners without question. When you start looking at places that players here from the United States can play at, though, it becomes a little bit different animal. Of course, the Mecca for years and years now has been down in Costa Rica in Central America. And in Costa Rica, I mean, they don't really give you a whole lot of license to run a sports book. I think that they used to get a license as a financial institution because they're taking money in and paying money out. But anymore, I mean, that seems to be where a lot of the places that we run into problems are from. But we've also seen a recent trend where some of the places in Costa Rica that are maybe less than honest, they're grabbing a license out of Curacao. And Curacao used to be a premier destination, but we've had several places there go out of business. Another premier destination that's now gone by the wayside and let some players down was Antigua. And so you have Panama with a couple of places. There's maybe a place or two in Belize, maybe a place in the Philippines, and then there's the Kanawaki Indian Reservation up in Montreal, which houses a couple places. And I just want to bring it to players' attention that just because a place is licensed doesn't necessarily mean that that gaming commission or that gaming body is going to help you out if you run into a problem. JR, you've been doing this a long time. Do you remember World Sports Exchange?
I remember World Sports Exchange. I even remember English sports betting.
Oh, yeah, down in Jamaica. Down in Jamaica, where really the only sports book now is the Greek. And the Greek's terrific, but English sports betting ran roughshod for a number of years before they finally shut down. And Antigua, they watched WSEX basically run with no money for a year and take players' funds, and they stiffed a lot of players too. So it's just a word to the wise that you see a seal on there that says, hey, we're licensed by these guys. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to help you if a place starts to go bad, or they're going to help you if a place rips you off, or they're going to help you if a place doesn't take your bets right or is mean to you, or whatever goes on out there that we deal with every day here at OSGA. So, it's nice to know a place is licensed. It's nice to see where they're licensed, but I think it's important for players to realize that license isn't a be-all, end-all. Maybe if you go back to the early 2000s, that Antigua license, that Curacao license were really worth something. But we've seen in recent years that just doesn't seem to be the case, and we urge players to take that license with a little bit of grain of salt, unless they're licensed by the UK government, and that's a big deal. But unfortunately here in the United States, unless some things change, and I'm going to talk about that a little later, unless some things change, you can't play with those big joints in the UK. So that's a little bit about what goes on here in the industry, and a little bit about what players should watch out for when they're looking at signing up and sending their hard-earned money down to one of these sports books. We've got the NFL playoffs this weekend. This is the playoff edition of Cast Your Bets. And we've got 4 games on the board, JR. We've got Tennessee, Kansas City. We've got Atlanta and the Rams. We've got Buffalo and Jacksonville, a game I really want to watch, Carolina and New Orleans, where they're going at it for the 3rd time. Who do you like as a free pick for the listeners this weekend, JR? Who'd you pull out of the paperwork and come up with for a big fat winner this week?
Well, last week, like I said, it went ugly, as I apologize to the listeners for the ugly game, but 6-0 was a winner. And this week, I'm going to go square. And you very seldom hear me say square, but you know what? The numbers are just overwhelmingly strong. I'm going to look at the first game on Saturday with the Chiefs and the Titans. Now, Tennessee's coming into Kansas City, and I'm not going to play the side selection here, as I think that's too tough. But let me tell you, these two teams are run and grind kind of teams. The last time they played, back in December, they played a 19-17 ball game, and that number was 43.5. The line currently is 44 right now. The game figures to be a running game. I'm telling you, Kansas City loves to run the ball. Then they're going to run the rock. The Titans, with Mariota banged up, is also going to run, as basically they ran almost 40 times last week in their ugly 15-10 game against the Jacksonville Jags. How about some of these numbers? Kansas City, 9-0 under, playing at home with an over-under line between 42 and 45. I think they're going to run the ball. I know it's a square play, but the under is going to be hitting here. 10-7 at halftime, 17-13 going into the fourth quarter. I know nobody likes to play the under. They hold their nose, and everybody loves the favorite, and everybody loves the overs. But let me tell you, the sharp game here, where my handicapping numbers are 39 right now, is under Kansas City, Tennessee, 45, played at 44 all the way down there. That is overwhelmingly strong play to the under in the NFL playoffs.
That's a nice look at this game, JR. I mean, Tennessee's definitely had some problems throwing the ball. Mariota, I think, has thrown 15 interceptions in the last few games. Love the kid, but, he's thrown a few interceptions there. I mean, they played a game this season where it was 12-9, and it was against the Browns. So I can see why you're thinking Tennessee's not really going to light it up. And the Chiefs had that one stretch where they went 1-6, which scared the hell out of everybody. I mean, Alex Smith, he's one of these what they call serviceable quarterbacks, I guess. And I was looking at this game a little myself, and you have the Tennessee Titans who lost their last three going into this. You have the Chiefs who seem to be rolling a little bit going into this. The Chiefs are an 8 or 8.5 point favorite, which seems a little high to me. So I'm kind of glad you're not looking at the side on this game. I like your pick here, JR.
Yeah, let me tell you, I know it's Square, and I know the listeners obviously think I'm the further things from Square because, hey, JR, you're always talking about the entire universe and who's on this side and who's on that side. But, the public and the sharps are both going to play this game under the total. There's no way I'm going to go over with a Tennessee Titan team that's going to run the ball. Mariota, there's something wrong with him. Now, he was a great quarterback at Oregon. He lit it up. But this is the NFL. Bigger guys, faster guys, everybody's an all-star. They are going to grind it out. They went 15-10 against Jacksonville. I'm telling you, this game will not get out of the 30s. I love the under here as a strong play. Take it as a strong play in the NFL.
Nice, man. So that'll be, what are you going, 44 on this? Under 44?
Yeah, 45 would be a not safe line because obviously there's nobody that's going to have these fictitious lines. It's painful to see some of these guys out there put fictitious lines out there. This line will actually close at 43.5. I would play it all the way down to 43, 42.5. It's under 44 right now.
All right, well, let's take 44. We'll put that in the pencil. You can get that at 44 probably up until Saturday or so, I would think. And it's only going to go up from there, I would think, because like you say, the public really doesn't like playing under, despite what the numbers seem to show you and what you manage to dig out of your giant pile of paper every week. One game, we haven't really talked about it, but one game that I'm really interested in seeing what happens is the Buffalo-Jacksonville game. Buffalo to me seems like they're just happy to be there. And then you see the numbers at like -8, -9, -8.5. And I'm like, damn, this is another game that I'm avoiding myself. But I'm interested to see what goes on with this game because it could be one of these games where Jacksonville wins by 25 points.
Yeah, obviously, if you think back the first game of the year, and I'm obviously going deja vu and I'm flowery here with the twinkle stars, but, I gave out Jacksonville the first game of the year. We turned some heads with them, and I told you Doug Marrone and Jacksonville was going to get after it. They put up about 30 against a real good team. I apologize, but you have to remember, first pick of the year, we put up Jacksonville's. I think it went 6-7-0 right out of the gate, and they could play some offense. This game is obviously screaming no respect for the Buffalo Bills. They were like a college team on the Pick 64 final college basketball thing where they all were sitting around, and when the Baltimore Ravens lost, they were jumping up and down like they couldn't believe they were even in. Now they have to prepare for a Jacksonville team that doesn't turn the ball over. They're functional. They run the ball, and let me tell you, it's going to get ugly. Buffalo is going to be starstruck in the beginning, but this screams no respect for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and, especially if Shady McCoy doesn't play, I mean, that's just going to be tough. Rookie, first-time quarterback in the NFL playoffs. No Shady McCoy at tailback, and I'm just curious to see what happens with that game. Because to me, if you go back to when I didn't really used to break down a lot of paper, and I was just like my friend almost was like, we're willing to take my bets anyway, just because he knew I was terrible. It just screams to me that Jacksonville is going to win by 25 here. I don't know. And then the Rams-Falcons game, I think that's going to be a great game to look at. I think the Carolina-New Orleans game is also another game where you can dig down deep and maybe find something in there. And we'll look forward to heading over to pregame.com and seeing what JR has as his pick. You're only picking one this week, right?
Yeah, I'm only going to play one game. I could pick them all, but I'm only going to pick one game. I love the under in the Tennessee game. I'm going to fire up a nice 3-star on Saturday. It is on the Atlanta-LA Rams game.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out, see who you like there. One of the things that I try to do every week here is talk a little bit about what we hear on our phone lines, what we get on our chat, the stuff that we get in our email at osga.com. And we've been getting a lot of feedback for the last few weeks. Many people aren't aware that there was a U.S. Supreme Court case where New Jersey is trying to get legalized sports betting, like Vegas-style sports betting in New Jersey. They managed to get their case all the way to the Supreme Court. Kind of a states' rights case, a little bit interesting there that it's not really totally about betting. It's more about states' rights. Really, you see the NBA, they're kind of like, yeah, we want people betting on our sport. And then the NFL's, the NFL's the NFL. You're not allowed to make any money off the NFL unless the NFL makes the money. And so we've been getting a lot of questions. When's this going to happen? What happened with the Supreme Court case? The Supreme Court is not like, it is on Law and Order. At the end of the show, there's no decision. The Supreme Court takes their time. They write up opinions. Each judge writes up an opinion, and it takes many months for this to happen. Frankly, this probably won't see any kind of resolution or ruling until we get to the spring, late April, May, probably June is the most realistic time we'll see this. And then we have guys saying, well, if they overturn this law so that the reason none of us can bet except for Vegas, how soon is it going to happen? Some of the places in Jersey have said they'll be up relatively shortly. Monmouth Park claims they'll be up in a week, which I think is funny. And if it is, JR, we're heading to Monmouth Park. But it's not going to happen overnight. States are all going to have to pass their own laws. They're going to have to get their own framework in place. I think we've got, even if this law does get overturned and there is a new way to bet sports here in the United States and bet sports legally wherever you live, it might not be wherever you live. And it's going to take a while for it to really roll out. I think New Jersey is going to be in there right away. Pennsylvania, New York, there's a couple of states who are on board right away, it seems like. But it's not something where you should sit around with bated breath and wringing your hands waiting to, dump your offshore account so you can go play at, Wynn's Place or MGM somewhere or whatnot, because it's going to take a little while. So folks should just keep that in mind. Nothing's really going to happen on this thing here through the winter. I just can't see any kind of decision coming until late spring. JRO, another great podcast. I'm super looking forward to some playoff football this weekend. I'm really looking forward to the national championship game. You going to have a pick on the championship game?
Absolutely. I don't have it up there now because I got to do a little more research. Basically, I need to see where the public and the sharp guys go. But I will have a pick on the championship game. It's a Monday night. It's a marquee game. Two great teams. It's going to be a whale of a game, and that is correct. Pregame.com, J.R. O'Donnell. I'll have the championship game.
That's fantastic, man. I'm gonna have to check that one out too. Although I'm not playing the game, I just want to watch that game myself. Because I can't see Nick Saban win again, man. It's like watching Brady win again. It's killing me. But folks, look, you can listen to us each and every week out on iTunes, Blueberry.com, OSGA.com, and if you search under OSGA Sports Betting or Cast Your Bets in YouTube, you'll find a real nice video presentation of this podcast. JRO is going to finish out the weekend here with a pick on under in the Tennessee Titans Kansas City Chiefs NFL playoff matchup. He's got some stuff out on pregame.com. We got some stuff over at OSGA.com. And we look forward to seeing you right here again on Cast Your Bets.
You've been listening to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast. Check in each week for more inside the sports gaming world. And don't forget to check us out on your favorite social media site and on our YouTube channel at OSGA Sports Betting. Thanks for listening.